What do you think is the number one predictor of there being child abuse in a home?
An absent parent.
Okay, very, very reasonable answer. And so usually in lecture one, when I'm teaching an evolution psychology course, I'll ask this question and I'll start putting all the students' answers. And they're all reasonable answers. If there is alcoholism in the home, if one of the parents had been abused in their past so that they mimic that behavior onto their children, then all reasonable. Well, what if and by the way, no one guesses what the real answer is. So then I say, well, guess what, guys? You just listed 25 reasonable predictors. The number one predictor is 100-fold more predictive than anything that's on that board. I've lectured this a million times. I'm getting good.
Nah, I'm gonna pause it right there and start off by saying I've seen this already, and that's why I'm playing it now. And at first, I didn't know the idea, but like he said, when I figured it out or when he told me it was, I'm like, yeah, pretty much. Because most of the time, if that person doesn't extend, matter of fact, I'm gonna stop right here, let him finish, and then I'm gonna finish my thought later.
Goosebumps telling it to you right now. So let me explain what 100-fold means. In science, when let's say you have, I want to check the efficacy of a drug, and I want to compare it to a placebo, a sugar pill. Well, if it has a 1.2 odds ratio, meaning it's 20% more effective. So it's 1 to 1.2. That would be a big effect. 1 to 1.2. What I'm saying is 1 to 100. So it is astronomically greater effect than anything we would typically publish in science. Well, the number one reason, Stephen, I've kept you in suspense long enough, is if there is a step parent in the family. So there's 100-fold increase in child abuse if the home is not made up of two biological parents. This is why the fable of Cinderella is such a universal fable, because it speaks to an evolution.
Nah, that makes sense. And you just remember when we were talking about the situation, he is not saying that all people, for whoever tries to dig a hole in it. He's just saying the majority says that a step parent will be 100% more likely, not even to cause harm, but let's just say to dislike, which is understandable. Like, I can't really hold that against them. I would just say, as a grown person, well, it'll be on both parties, because if your kid is doing something to jeopardize that said relationship because they felt like you should be with their father, then that would be on you as a person or as a woman and or man to see that thing and nip it in the bud or say whatever, do whatever. But at the same time, you can be mad at the person who they're trying to forgive or get to look past or whatever for them doing something. That's where this statistic comes in, because I'm pretty sure there's probably no, I don't want to even say it's probably more, because I'm not totally sure. I'm gonna keep it 100. I'm not totally sure if there's more people that pass this test than other people that passed it. And yes, I look at it as a test, because at the end of the day, if I'm a man before whoever the higher power is, and I'm sitting here doing shit to children, you feel me? Let's go to the next one.
So if I give you a glass of water and then I piss in it and then I add sugar, it doesn't remove the piss. These are both independent things. This is what tends to happen. This is what we don't understand about trauma. Removing the piss requires removing the piss. No amount of sugar will take it out of the drink. Okay? So this is mistake number one. No amount of building something good will remove something bad. Okay? So healing, and it's also...
Now, I did not watch this all the way through, but the simple fact is, I don't know about everybody else, but when you hear some shit that makes sense, well, for me, I have to save it for content, as you can see. But once you hear some shit that makes sense, because I always try to figure out what men and women, when they be sitting here talking about heal this and heal that, is like, what are you actually healing? Do you know what you're healing? Because if you're talking about the word specifically healing, that means you would need a wound. A mental wound is still a wound nonetheless, but I think that's a different type of healing. We don't have a word for it yet, I'm pretty sure. The only word I could correlate with would be fucking emotional intelligence. That's the only word I can correlate with that type shit. But it was still, people will still consider it some sort of type of healing. But we gonna see what he has to say, because I feel like there's something in here that most of y'all not getting. I probably get, not nothing against you, but for some reason when I say it, it's like an unpopular opinion. When it shouldn't really be that unpopular. Like we know and we see and we do and we act. But let's go.
Also, like, you know, if I break a leg, no amount of bench press will heal my leg. Like, I can build as much as I want to. I can fix my hair. I can brush my teeth, but the leg is broken. The leg is broken. Same is true of the mind. Okay. Second thing is, what happens is we have, like, our consciousness is divided. Now we're going to get kind of technical and off the rails. So we have all of these, like, dormant pieces of our consciousness that activate in certain situations. One of the biggest mistakes we make about healing is we look at what is active in our mind 90% of the time, and we assume that the injury is no longer there. That's not the case. Does that make sense?
100%.
Right? So the injury just goes dormant. Then there are certain things that happen that can trigger that injury. That's what we call triggers, right? So if I'm traumatized, if we look at like PTSD, and I've been traumatized by, you know, a bomb going off, literally my brain has certain circuits that scans my perceptual environment and decides what to activate. So there are ways stillness makes you feel small, and fuck you if you're ever going to be small again. Never again, never again, never again. I would bet money that if you sit by yourself and you're not occupied, right? That's why you have to watch crime shows, because if you don't watch crime shows, you're going to be still. And if you're still, that's unacceptable. Okay? So dormant things.
Remember I said I never watched this before? It's kind of variant to a specific side. I don't want to be biased, so I'm not gonna say what side I'm think is variant to. But if you're watching this video, you leave in the comments what side you think is variant to between us, because we gonna continue. I won't say nothing.
Have to be healed where they belong. And this is where we can look at the science of healing trauma. So here are the steps. First thing is safety, so that we can get neuroplasticity. Second thing is emotional awareness and emotional regulation. And this allows us for number 3, which is really important, which is identity. So if we look at our human sense of identity, how do you develop an identity? So identity requires a timeline.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing is, if we look at the formative moments of your life, they all have emotion. So this is what's really important. If you have an identity that is bad in any way, you can never change that identity without emotions. So who we are is a narrative of our most emotional experiences. There are all these moments, these powerful emotional moments. So if your emotions are dulled by drugs, by technology, by pornography, by watching serial killer shows, you will never change who you are. It is impossible. The neuroscience of your identity and development requires emotional experience. Okay? So with trauma, that's the next thing that happens. Once we have access to emotions, then we can become someone else. Now, the problem with trauma is that before we become someone else, the beliefs we have about ourselves become our destiny. And that's not like some, spiritual, get connected with you. This is like fucking science, right? If you believe you are a loser, the empathic circuits of other people's brains will detect that in you, and they will treat you like a loser. You carry who you are with you. That's why you get into failed relationship number 1, failed relationship number 2, failed relationship number 3, until you changed. And when you change, your sense of identity changes, then your future will change. The last thing to do is, on a more microscopic level, look at these responses within yourself. So you asked me at the very beginning of the podcast, and now we're coming full circle. How do you start understanding yourself? So you look at the drives within yourself, right? How do you start? So what I would say is sit for 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Sometimes we'll tell people to stare at a wall for an hour and just look.
Make sure y'all listening. I don't know who watching. I don't know who's listening, but make sure y'all listening. Make sure y'all listening, because I don't know if y'all picking it up, but I'm picking it up. I'm gonna give you my thoughts after this. I may stop the video early. I'm not totally sure. Not totally sure. But like I said, I never watched it, and I'm sided with him. There's nothing. I haven't heard a wrong word yet in his sentence to try to, well, let's not say try to correct them, because that's when I start understanding that people start to listen for something wrong. But even if I try to listen for something wrong, I still haven't found it.
Look at what on earth goes on inside you. You will discover that it is a zoo of thoughts, feelings, emotions, drives, panics, worries, distractions. Your internal environment is such a mess. So what we need to do is just kind of calm that stuff down by like just letting it kind of run out of steam. So this is a principle of the mind that if we feed our mind, it'll continue to grow. But like what we need to do is just let it run out of steam. So just sit and do nothing for a while. People don't realize the part of our brain that exerts willpower has something to do with this part of our brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. The anterior cingulate cortex is a piece of where willpower comes from, but it is also the part of our brain that monitors conflict. So willpower and monitoring a conflict are actually technically the same thing. The same part of the brain activates. And if you pay attention to your own internal experience, what you'll realize is anytime you're using willpower, there's an internal struggle that you are paying attention to. It's like, I don't want to order chicken. I want to order fried chicken. So there's a monitoring of the conflict that goes on. That's anytime you're exerting willpower, there's this thing this way and this thing this way, but you are aware of it. You can't exert willpower if you're behaving automatically, right? That's why it's so easy to get lost in doom scrolling, because you're not even aware of what you're doing before, and then 4 hours have gone by and you're like, what happened? You're not aware. So this is the crazy thing from a neuroscientific perspective, and this is what the yogis will teach as well. Awareness is willpower. Tons of addicts, they come up for air, and maybe you've done this, and maybe people at home have done this. You go on this binge and then you come up for air and you're like, what have I been doing for a couple of days? What I've been doing for a couple of hours? Then you gain that awareness again. So the more that you are aware in the present moment, the more your problems will literally melt away. It's like crazy. I don't quite know how it works, but this is what.
Now that's why I'm gonna stop it, because there ain't nothing really left for me to say about this. He said he didn't say all that he can say, because there's still 2 minutes left in the video. I want to leave y'all on the cliffhanger, right? I do want to leave y'all on the cliffhanger, but I would just simply say it's more simple when you actually have the knowledge to decipher what he's saying. Yeah. And if you don't have the knowledge to decipher what he's saying, you just need a little more experience. And I don't even want to say it's going to be bad experience, because it doesn't have to be. It legitimately doesn't have to be. It's more allowing logic to allow you to tell you your emotions. And I'm gonna leave it right there, because if you don't believe me, I got these two for you.